as we come up into the year, one of the things I always struggle with is the first Sunday of the year is doing a New Year's sermon on like January 6th. Like you've had 6 days, you're already past New Year's resolutions. You've given up on all your resolutions at this point. And so I want to talk to you just a little bit about what we've done this year and maybe give you some things to think about in the coming year. I want to remind you about 2024. And for some of you who are not here the entire year, maybe you've come in this year, some of this will be new to you. But I just want to kind of remind you and share with you what God has done in 2024 and what you've done in 2024. We started off with the theme of amateur year. And that's one of those things, like every time I've told somebody about the theme, they're like, they get this look on my face. And then I explain it, and they're like, oh yeah, I get it. So let me just explain it for those of you that don't know. Amateur, we think about amateur as being low quality or unpaid. That's what we think about when we say amateur. But the word amateur actually means someone who does something for the love of the thing that they do. And I've encouraged you this year to become amateurs in this church, in your homes, at work. People who find a way to act out of love for what they do. That you don't do this out of guilt, you don't do this just out of necessity, but you do this out of love. Whether it's working in the nursery, whether it's organizing volunteers, whatever it is that you're doing, that you find a way to act out of love because that will change everything about how you do it. And many of you have taken on that challenge. And you've been amateurs this year, and that's been obvious. Sometimes it's obvious because we mess up, because we're amateurs, and sometimes it's obvious by the way that you love one another and the way that you work. And I'm just grateful that you have made this an amateur year, and we've seen what God has done this year because of the way that we've approached it. I just wanted to share some basic information with you that maybe you don't realize about this year. This year, we've seen 5 different people saved. And this is my 5th year at Solid Rock, and 5 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but that's 5 people that didn't know Jesus that know Jesus now. This is my 5th year at Solid Rock. We're in this month of the 5th year. And everybody that's pastored longer than me says you really have to pastor about 5 years before you're the pastor. So I'm glad to know we can finally start on some work now. I don't know what we've been doing for the past 5 years, but to see that this is the way that the church has grown, 5 people would have been a pretty significant percentage of the church before, and to see that now that God has brought 5 new people to know Him through our work this year. And I'll tell you what I'm really excited about this number is that I was only involved in one of those, and none of those happened in this building. Okay? Why is that exciting? Because a lot of preachers, they preach to guilt someone or scare someone into making a decision in the service, right? Because that's exciting. Somebody comes up and they're saved in the service, and then they walk out and you talk to them later, and they were just scared. They didn't do anything. But when people are saved through the work of this church, but not in our services, what that means is that we've planted a seed and God has worked on it and it's real. We've seen teenagers saved this year. We've seen adults saved this year. And I love it when kids are saved, but only one of those were kids that were saved. It's not like these are just kids who are turning 9 and we're going to get there. This year is going to be a year that we see a bunch of kids saved because they're at that point. We're seeing them, and we're already having those conversations. This may sound, you may be horrified by what I'm about to say, but I've talked more kids out of being saved this year than we've seen saved. And what I mean by that is we have kids that are so excited that they want to be saved, and they come and talk to me, and I talk to them, and they are not ready. They don't understand it. They just love Jesus, and they want to do the next thing. And we've got a bunch of kids that are at that point that they're going to be saved in this next year. And we're going to see that. And I'm going to have to talk some of them out of being saved, because when that core group of boys is saved probably this year, and there's a bunch of other kids that want to come along with them, I'm going to say, wait a minute, let's hang on just a second. But we're going to see that this year. But it's not just been kids. But we've seen adults saved. We've seen teenagers saved. More than that, we've seen people that were saved a long time ago come back into an active relationship with God. That doesn't mean that they weren't saved, that they were lost their salvation and they're getting it back. But what that means is that they were saved, they trusted in Jesus, but they wandered, and they've come back. We baptized 10 this year. Half of those, or 4 of those, were people that were saved in that first number. The rest of those were people that are finally taking that big commitment and that big step. baptized 10 the first year that I've ever baptized an entire family at once. I've never seen that happen before. Baptized a couple at the same time, baptized a family at the same time. And we have, I can think of 4 right now off the top of my head that need to be baptized that are waiting on just getting themselves ready to be able to do that. So we've got that. And we've seen 29 new people commit themselves to this church through membership this year. That's a big deal, especially when we think about where we were 5 years ago. And if you're used to coming from a much larger church, these numbers may not seem significant, but if you think about the size of our church, this is a big deal, the work that God has done this year through that. And I'm pretty sure that I'm off on these numbers. I'm pretty sure that I'm low. I remember that people were saved. I just have no idea what day it is most of the time, so figuring out whether it was this year or not is difficult for me. But I know we've got others there. When you look at what God has done in our attendance, just growing us, and attendance is not the end-all, be-all of things, but I just want you to kind of have some perspective on this. The year before I came, the attendance, I don't have those exact numbers, but we came the first week of December, and we're here for that, and we had bigger numbers that year. But that year, the attendance was about 35 people. That's about where it was. And you can just see the progression until last week we're asking people to move. And here's the thing, last week was not our highest attendance of the year. God has been continued to bring people in to the point that we've got to make some big decisions about space. We've got to make some big decisions about staff, and we'll be doing those in the next year. So God has really grown us, and you see that our high attendance of the year was Camp Rock, Family Day, and then we had Easter, which is just a couple of people under that, and then Christmas was just a couple of people under that. So it's been a big year for us with first-time guests coming in. But if you remember last year, we counted all our first-time guests and talked about, okay, we want to do this for God, and we want to do this for God, and we want to do this for God, and we're asking in return for Him to send us 112 first-time guests. And instead, we had close to 300 first-time guests. And to see that that's happened, but the difference this year has been that it's not just been people coming in and then leaving, but it's been people that have come in that Jesus has brought to us and added to our body, which has been really exciting to see that. And we have several others that are ready to make that step too. We're just waiting on them to take that step. Other than numbers, I just don't want to focus on numbers all the time, but some of the things that we did that we were able to help with. We talked a little bit about benevolence and what we've been able to do there. This year, we helped 8 different families at different levels. Most of the time, we help at about $500. But for others, we've been able to help at larger amounts through our benevolence committee and giving away money this year. We generally do not help people that don't have a connection to this church. If we helped everybody that sent a request for money to me, then we would be passing out checks every single day. I am not joking. I have people from all over the world asking for money every single day. And the thing is, we can't help everybody. We're not that big that we can do all of that, but we can help where we can help. And so we help people that are either in our church or have a connection to our church. So if you come and say, my neighbor, my friend, whoever, we want to help them because we want to help you as you're ministering to that person. So we've been able to help 8 families, but through our food pantry, and Dennis is here every other Monday, the first and third Monday. He's here from 9 to 11, wandering around the building, doing stuff while he's passing out food. We've had 27 different families be helped through our food pantry, and that is really a small picture of what's happened because most of those families come back multiple times. So we have families that come back, maybe they've got larger households, so we help, we have a certain amount of food that we give per people, so we're giving out 2 or 3 of that amount, or we have families that come back every week or multiple weeks. I think we have one lady that's here every week getting help. So we've been able to help a lot through that. Our ministries have been able to focus. We've been able to help a lot through our ministries. Do I have missions on there, Tori? There we go. We doing missions, and I want us to be able to do more, but this is what we've done so far. We donated one of our vans to Unity in Farmington. Brother Verlin and Sister Dora are down there pastoring, and this is an established church. It's not a new church, but it was down to about 7, 8, 9 people. It was almost gone, and Brother Verlin and the store have gone down there and worked till that church is up to about 40 now after 2 years, and he's bad at retirement, but good at pastoring, I guess. So things have gone really well, and one of the things they said is we really want to minister to our community, but we don't have a way to bring kids in. And so we had a van that we weren't using and donated that van. It was a big help. We donated equipment and Bibles to Arkansas State Missionaries. We've donated Bibles to a Hispanic work, to a church plant in Little Rock. We gave security cameras to one church that really needed it and got them set up with that. We donated one of our live stream cameras to a church in Springdale and have been able to help all over the place. And our giving, that number is just what I was able to get going through the financial reports. It's closer to $10,000 that we've been able to give to missions this year, both through our regular support because we support a church plant in Colorado. We support the church plant in Little Rock that we gave Bibles to. We support Thrive Student Ministry at the University of Arkansas. And we support Arkansas State Missions, which is all the missionaries that are sent, or they're not sent out. This is complicated, but they receive their pay through our state association. We support that fund to help them every year. So we've given about $10,000. I'm really glad that we've given about $10,000, but when you look at our budget, is that what we need to be doing? Do we need to be doing more? What can you be doing? We've helped with missions there. Our ministries that happen here, our kids' ministries are going really well. I saw a picture the other day, and I sent it out to the leaders of the kids' ministry that in 2021, Christmas of 2020, what was it, Brett? 2020? I'm telling you, I wouldn't know what year it is right now if I hadn't looked at a calendar recently. Christmas of 2020, we've been here a year, there were 7 kids that I brought up on this stage and did a Christmas story with during our Christmas service. And I don't know if you weren't here last week to see, I think there were 27 kids on stage plus those that had stage fright, right? Those that weren't able to be here. And so the way that God has grown our ministry, it's been huge. Carla has done a ton of work. Megan's working with her. And then we've also, the thing that I'm most excited about is the work that we've done in being intentional about what we're teaching the kids. We don't just want to go through David and Goliath and Noah's Ark and Jesus fed the 5,000. We just don't want to hit the same 7 stories. So our goal in children's ministry is to cover they've got 8 years in children's ministry from 4 years to 6th grade. We want to cover every story in the Bible, and that gets awkward. That gets really awkward when you're telling every story in the Bible, but it's funny. Daniel and Alicia, when they first started coming, Daniel has not great experience with children's ministry, and so he didn't really want to send Nathaniel into there, but they did, and he asked Nathaniel what he learned about when he came out, and he said, I learned about the judge that killed the fat king. And he's like, okay, we're doing deep cuts. We're not just hitting the surface on this, and so it's been really good to see that. The teachers all told me that I had to write the lesson on the rape of Tamar, and that was... we managed to figure that out. But we went through that, so we want to cover every lesson in the Bible, every story in the Bible. We cover that twice, so the kids know the entire Bible. We want to have them memorize passages of Scripture. There's somewhere around 50 passages of Scripture that they memorize in 4 years, and they do that twice while they're in their ministry. And the big reason that we don't buy material but write it is because no one else shares the gospel every single lesson the way we want to. And one of the reasons that you talk to these kids and you ask them about the gospel, they know what it is because we cover it every time. We cover it the same way every time. And so we've got writers that have done that. Carla, Myra, Megan, Audra, and Lindsay have written our material for this year, and it is work, okay? It's a lot of work for them to do that, but it pays off. You go talk to our kids, and our kids can tell you a lot about the Bible. They can do that. Now, we want to do that twice. And then when they go into teen ministry, we want to take everything that they've learned, all those basics that they have. And in teen ministry, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, what do these teenagers need to know before they leave our church, before they leave their parents' homes and go into the world to try to be believers? What do we need to teach them? We don't just want to, let's talk about the Bible stories anymore. We want to cover this. So we started that the first semester of this year with a 6-year curriculum that will go all the way through, and we just repeat it every 6 years, the same way we do at kids ministry. But we started, and we bought some material, and that didn't work out really well. I've taken over this semester, and of course, because I'm ridiculous, I'm writing all the material, but we covered, first of all, spiritual disciplines and teaching them how to have a relationship with God that's an active one, not just being saved and then showing up to church, but how to spend that time with God, what to do. The last half of the semester, we covered temptation, how to deal with temptation, what God says about temptation, how to respond after you've failed. and given in on that. And so the work has gone really well with our teens, and I appreciate all of those working with our teens. Our small group ministry has gone really well this year. I'm excited about what's happened. We've added our new young adult ministry, our small group. That's been a rough start. Those are one of those things that I don't really understand what's been rough about it and why it doesn't work, but it's been rough, but we're hitting the ground running on that again in January, and we'll talk a little bit more about what our small groups are going to be doing this year coming up. Some new stuff that we've started this year that's been really exciting is, first of all, our Solid Rock 101 class, and that is basically a membership class. There's 4 sessions to that. 3 sessions. Which one is it, Mike? 3 sessions. We talk about what we believe, we talk about how our church operates, and then we talk about how you can be involved. And we've had 12 different families go through that this year to learn about that. I want to encourage you as we do that to look and see if we've got new families going through that, let them go through that. But if you've been a member here for a while or you haven't been through that, go there, and just because it's amazing the things that people don't know about how we operate, what we believe, things like that. And so it's great to see that. So we'll be doing that again this year. Our discipleship ministry has gone really well. We got a lot of men involved in that, and we got some women. The reason there's less men than women, or less women than men, is because they're just have a different approach. So the men, it's just everybody show up, and if you want to be a part of this, be a part of this, and we're going to figure it out as we go, right? We'll build the plane in the air. That's what we do. The women are doing it differently, where they start off with a small group, they train them, go through that, disciple them, and then they take on other people so it grows. And so that's going to be hitting a larger stride this year, our discipleship, but it's been really good. And if you want to be a part of that, you can talk to Kim about that. That women's discipleship also has that Bible study once a month, and it's a great way to ease into that. I did not know this. I don't know if it's just us or not, but men are a lot more likely to jump in with another couple of guys and just spend time together than women are. I don't really understand that. I would have predicted the opposite, but we have to help women be more comfortable. So we're doing that with our that Bible study to spend that time together so that they can then jump into that discipleship. You don't know about this probably, but one of the things that we've done and expanded this year is our Barnabas work. If you don't know who Barnabas is, Barnabas, other than Jesus, is probably my favorite character in the Bible. Barnabas is not his actual name, okay? His name was Joseph, I believe, but they called him Barnabas, and that means son of encouragement. Barnabas is the first one that gave when the church first started and they needed money to take care of people. Barnabas gave a field. He sold the field and gave the money. Barnabas is the one that was one of the pastors there at the church, but he went and was sent to Antioch to go help when there was a new church up there. He was sent to help. And he went and he said, this church needs help, and I know I'm not a guy that needs the work. So he went and found this guy named Saul, who was also known as Paul, and brought him in to be a pastor for the first time there at that church at Antioch, and was his first partner when they went on the mission work. And Barnabas always pushed other people forward and pulled himself back. That's what he did. And so he was an encourager. He got people connected. He found their place. And so we have a Barnabas ministry, and that has a very organized structure and a very disorganized, organic structure. The organized way is that every week Miss Karen takes attendance. And she doesn't take attendance so we can call you and say, where you been? You've missed. You need to go to detention for being late. That's not what that's for. As I'm tired of hearing people say, well, I left that church and nobody ever even noticed. Because the thing is, people notice, but they don't want to harass you about it, so they don't say anything about it. And then it gets awkward because you've been gone so long. So what Miss Karen does is she takes attendance every week. And then she goes through that attendance, and she finds people who have been gone for 2 weeks or more, and she sends out the list of those people to the deacons and myself so that the deacons know which of their people are falling through the cracks and can reach out to them and say, hey, I've missed you. Now, they may not hit you every time. They may say, well, I know what's going on there. I've talked to them. Somebody else has talked to them. But that we pay attention and that no one is discouraged that they fall through the cracks and nobody notices. The second thing that we do is something that we've had, and it's been a little bit quieter, but Grant has been heading something up, and what his job is to look around and say, who doesn't have a friend in this church? Who is lonely in this church? Who shows up, sits down, walks out with nobody to connect them to? And his job is to look for those people and to find other people that he thinks would connect well with them, because he has the superpower of friendship and understands this stuff, to connect those people so that everyone in this church has someone. And some of you say, well, nobody cares about me. Nobody wants to be my friend in this church. Nobody wants me. And that's not true. Maybe you're showing up and hanging around and nobody's talking to you, but generally what's happening is you walk in the last minute, you sit down, and then you get up and walk out and say, nobody wants to talk to me, when you run me over getting out the door. But Grant's job is to say, okay, who are these people that need to be connected to this church that are resisting that, and who can I connect with them? So if Grant calls you and says, hey, I think you would get along really well with this person. Would you give them a call and go to lunch with them? Say yes. Because it's good for you and it's good for them. Tracy's not in here, so the other Tracy's not in here, so I'll share a little bit about that. And I don't know, I would share if she was in here too, but she'll be less embarrassed this way. Tracy got a call from Grant and said, hey, there's a person in the church that I think you would get along with that needs a friend. Would you go to lunch with them? And she was very, very nervous to go. But she did it. And when she got done, she called Grant and said, thank you so much for asking me to do that. I had such a great time. I was so scared to do this, but it was a huge blessing to me to do that. And our Barnabas ministry is not something that we're going to advertise. It's not something that we're going to recruit for. It's not something that's going to be in any of our paperwork that's out there. It's just something that we do to make sure that you are connected to this church. So that's been really good. And then our outreach committee. So we had an outreach committee, and we kind of relaunched that and redid it. And it took a little while to get off the ground, but they planned a couple of events. Those events were really hard to get anybody to participate in. One was Popsicles in the Park, just passing out popsicles to people. Here's an invite card to the church. Here's a popsicle. Go for that. Dennis had a great time. But it was hard to get other people to participate in that. And then we tried to do the Bentonville Parade, and the Bentonville Parade said, we don't want y'all. So we got a rejection letter for that and for First Friday. City of Bentonville's not a fan of us, I guess. And we tried to do the Centerton Parade, and I don't know if there was conflicts or what, but we couldn't do that. Couldn't get enough people to make that happen. So I appreciate the outreach committee trying. They're going to be trying again. And so what we need you to do is be willing to participate in that. You don't have to do everything, but if you've got a free Saturday to do something, help out. Participate in that. Share what's going on in this church. We did our egg hunt, and that's mostly an outreach activity, and that's really good. We had a bunch of kids come in, adults. We get to share the gospel and then allow them to go hunt and do some things. We did our Fall Fest, and Fall Fest went really well, but it's probably not something we're going to do this year. We're going to do a little bit differently because we've never seen anyone come to our Fall Fest and then say, hey, I'm interested in checking out this church. We've had people that have been coming to the church, have been new, come to Fall Fest, get to know us and do that. But we're going to try some different things this year. So the outreach committee is going to work on that and do things a little bit differently going forward on that. They put together our neighbor gifts, and we've not done a ton of those, but that's probably my fault for not talking about it more. Out there on the table, there are cutting boards that have, it says home, and it's got a cross on it, and it says Solid Rock. Those are gifts for new neighbors that move into your neighborhood. So if you see somebody with a moving truck come in, get them one of those cutting boards. It's got an invite from our church. Bake them some cookies. Do something. Go drop that off and say, hey, we're really glad that you're here. I just want to give you this gift from me and our church. And they put those together for us, and we've given out a bunch of those. I'd like to give out a bunch more. Did you see the news about the states that people moved to in 2024? Arkansas was the #1 state in the country for people to move to. And you want to know where the #1 place for people to move to in Arkansas was? It was not, I was trying to pick up a name. It's not Pine Bluff, okay? It's not Pine Bluff. It's Northwest Arkansas. You have neighbors that are moving in constantly. So let's reach out to them, and they're taking care of all of that for us. So those are the things that we have done this year, but I also want to talk to you about some of the things that we're going to do differently next year. I like to have a theme. Like we did amateur year, we did the 112 project the year before that. We're not doing a theme like that because I'm pretty sure it's mostly me that cares about that, and I do a lot of work to get it there for things that only I care about. So we're not going to do a big theme like that this year, but we are going to focus our ministries on 2 passages of Scripture that I want to share with you and talk about what we're going to be doing and why we're going to be doing that this year. The first is Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. This is called the Great Commission. It's the last thing that Jesus told the church, told the believers there before he ascended to heaven. These are our marching orders as a church. And we do some of these really well, and others we pretend are not there. But we're going to focus on following the Great Commission this year. Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Now, why do we include that? Because that's not instructions. Why do we include that in the Great Commission? It's because that's Jesus' basis for being able to tell us what to do. He says, I'm in charge, listen to me. This is not optional. This is not your pastor suggesting this. These are commands from Jesus. Do these things. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. There are 4 commands here. The first is to go. And it's not just walk around, leave, go somewhere else. That's not what this is. But the idea is that you are going with the gospel, that you're sharing the gospel with people. The idea that you cannot be good enough to stand before God on your own without being punished with hell. But Jesus, who is the only Son of God, can stand before God because he has offered up his life on your behalf. And that if you will call out to him for rescue, you will realize that you're a sinner, that he's the only Son of God, and cry out to him for rescue, he will save you so that you're able to stand before God and spend eternity with him. Okay? Our mission, our command from Jesus, not your encouragement from your pastor. Your command from Jesus is to go with the gospel, to share the gospel with your family, your friends, your neighbor, your coworker. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go. We're supposed to make disciples. Disciples are followers. We're supposed to lead people to become disciples. Get them to follow Jesus, to set the example of following Jesus. And that's what we're trying to do both in our kids ministry, our teen ministry, and our discipleship ministry. That's 3 things, so I should not have said both. But in those ministries, that's what we're trying to do, is to make disciples. But it's not just up to our ministries to do that. That is a job that Jesus has given to you, to make disciples. The third thing is to baptize them. We're really good at baptizing people. Like, we'll baptize you right, and we'll get it done. Not right now. We're not Church of Christ. We wait a week. But we got to fill the baptistry up. We don't keep it filled up all the time. It gets nasty if you leave it in there. So we'll baptize you. We'll get that done. No hesitation at all. And we'll teach you, right? I have to tell Brother Roger to take a break on teaching. Like, you got to he said, I'm in my deathbed. I'm still going to go ahead and teach. I'm like, Brother Roger, just take a week off. You'll be fine. We teach and we teach and we teach and we teach. But what we don't do is we don't go with the gospel. And we're getting better at discipleship, but we don't do that. I love that there were 5 people saved through the work of this church this year. That's not enough. I could go through and tell you which people shared the gospel with those 5. And if we've got 150 people in this church, let's say a third of those are kids, so we've got 100 people in this church, I can count, there's about 3 people that shared the gospel that led to these people being saved that were saved this year. What would happen if we all took the command of Jesus seriously? That we stop looking at as an optional thing that some people do and some people don't do. We stop looking at it as something that I try to get you to do, but we said Jesus has all authority in heaven and on earth, and he has told me to share the gospel, and I'm going to stand before him and answer for that. I don't know if you know this or not, but when I stand before God as your pastor, I will answer for how I pastored you and how I follow Jesus personally. And personally, it is my job to share the gospel. But sharing the gospel individually is not part of my responsibilities as pastor. Do you know that? It's not. My job is to equip you to share the gospel, to encourage you to share the gospel, to help you find opportunities to share the gospel. And this year, we're going to make it so that when I stand before God, I will have done my job as pastor. I'm going to have to do some work personally, but as pastor, I'm going to equip you. We're going to do that, but you will stand before Jesus and he will say, who did you share the gospel with? Who else is here because of the work that you did? And what are you going to say to that? If Jesus came back today, and you're standing before him today and you're saying, he said, okay, I gave you this commission, gave you 4 things to do. Let's go through the list. How is that going to go for you? What would happen if it wasn't just 3 or 4 of us who took sharing the gospel seriously? But what if all of us said, you know what's our job, and this year I will share the gospel? What would happen? I'm going to tell you what we're going to do to help you share the gospel and stand before Jesus. The first thing that we're doing is, I believe it's January 25th. It's the last Saturday in January. We're bringing an outside group to do evangelism training with us. This is going to last about 3 hours. We're going to have childcare, so you don't have an excuse to miss because of kids. We're going to have that training, and they're providing this training free of charge. We're going to spend that day training to share the gospel. And I want you to be there. Because if you keep saying, I can't share the gospel because I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to find a right opportunity, but you don't take steps to deal with that, to learn how, then you have no excuse. So we're going to do evangelism training, and we're probably going to do it a couple of times this year so that those that don't go through it the first time can go through it again. But I want to encourage you to commit to, in January, showing up to that discipleship training. We're limited on the number of people that can be in each class, but they've said they'll bring in other people to help us serve as many people as we need to. So that will be January 25th, I think it is. It's the last Saturday of January. We're going to train you to share the gospel, but it's on you to show up and then on you to do the work. The second thing that we're going to do, that's a very high-level obedience, but if you need to be eased in a little bit, we're going to be doing outreach events throughout this year that give you the opportunity to kind of step your toes in the water a little bit, find out how not scary it is, and get in there so that you might be willing to share the gospel. High level of training, low level events. We're going to be doing breakfast at NWAC, just sharing the gospel with people, sharing invites with people, sharing pancakes with people, whatever it is that we're having. What are we having for breakfast? Kathleen left. Whatever it is that we're going to be doing, we're going to be doing that on that day. We're going to be working to get back involved in the Christmas parade. Maybe Bentonville will be bougie enough for them this year. I don't know. Maybe they'll let us in. We might have to slum it at Centerton, which is apparently not a great thing. I don't know. It sounds fine to me. But we're going to do that. We're going to be trying for First Friday again. Hopefully they won't reject us for that. But the big thing, there's 2 other things that I want you to be thinking about. Our small groups are going to be meeting in homes this year. All but one, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I don't know if you've noticed, if you ever noticed, some of you don't live in neighborhoods, but if you live in a neighborhood, have you ever noticed when other people in your neighborhood have people at their house? Have you noticed that, like there's cars everywhere? Does it feel strange when you see that? Like, what do they got all these people at their house for? Well, our neighbors have people over all the time and all the street, and the kids are looking out the windows like, what's going on? When people have other people over at their house, it stands out because we don't do that anymore. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is moving our small groups to houses. We're doing that for a few reasons we'll talk about in a minute, but a big one is so that our small groups can make it easier for you to share the gospel and invite your neighbors in. Because whenever they see there's all these people at your house, it's really easy for you to maybe go next door to the houses, 6 houses around you and say, hey, we're going to be having some people over tonight. I just want to let you know, we're not going to block your driveway or do anything. I just want you to know what's going on. And by the way, if you want to come over and hang out with us, we're having a Bible study, come hang out with us. Give you an opportunity to invite people into that. To have a block party, have a cookout in your front yard so that you can invite your neighbors into that because you know that you need to share the gospel with your neighbors and you just can't figure out an opportunity. We want to help create that opportunity for you. Our outreach committee is going to be working with small groups that want to do it to have those things at their houses. But we're also doing something else that's been really successful for me personally in the past, and that's we're going to be having Financial Peace University here at the church. Financial Peace University is Dave Ramsey's personal finance program, and what we'll do is we're going to host that here, and then it'll be on his website and everybody else's, all those places out there to invite people and say, if you're struggling with your money, come here, and we're going to help you. And every time that I have done that in the past, it has been mostly people that have never heard of a church, never been there, they're not believers. Sometimes they get a little rude about that. And they come in and we're able to help them, but also get to know them to get us an opportunity to share the gospel. That's going to be happening this year. So if you're somebody that says, you know what, I'm struggling financially, I could really use some of that myself, that's going to be available to you. But if you're not somebody that says, I don't need that help, if you're somebody that says, I don't need that help, but I need help getting to know people, I need help spending time with people, this is going to be a thing that we need you to be involved in, because we don't just want it to be a bunch of people that we don't know coming in here. We want our people in that group too. These are all outreach events. These are high-level and low-level opportunities for you to share the gospel, and I want you to take advantage of it. We're also going to be continuing with our discipleship. We've got our first men's discipleship night on the 16th of January. We're going to be doing dinner here. Show up and participate in that. I think Kim is getting ready to bring in another group of women really soon on that. If you want to be a part of that discipleship for the women, talk to Kim and get involved in those things right there. But I'm running longer than I intended to. So the second scripture that we're going to focus on is Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24 and 25. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another all the more as you see the day drawing near. Now, generally, when a preacher uses this, he's saying, come to church, right? Do not neglect the gathering together of yourselves. That's what that says. The meeting together. I'm quoting King James. But that's what they do with this. But that's not what this passage says. He says, let us, that's plural. It's not pastors. It's the church. Consider, let's think about and work towards how to stir one another up to love and good works. One another does not mean me stirring you up. One another means us stirring each other up to love, good works, and encouragement. The meeting together, the whole purpose of the not forsaking the gathering together of yourselves, or whatever it is it says up there, the whole purpose of that is so that we have the opportunity to stir one another up. Not so that we get our gold star for perfect attendance when we get to heaven and check the attendance chart. That's not the point. The point is that we might stir one another up. And honestly, Sunday mornings are not a good way for us to stir one another up. It's a good way for me to stir you up, hopefully, but it's not a good way for us to stir one another up. We do that in serving and in our small groups. And so one of the ways that we're going to push to help you stir one another up and to follow this command is by changing our small groups. So we're doing things a little bit differently. First of all the previous small groups are gone. They do not exist anymore after we start this back. Instead, we're going to be starting new small groups. Now, Sunday night small group is going to be like a twin to the old one. You're going to think it's that way, but I can't say they're all dead except for that one. We can't do that. Sunday night small group is going to continue here at the church just for logistical issues for people that have mobility issues they have to deal with to get in there. So we're going to keep that one here. But the other small groups, have 3 different small groups besides Sunday night. That will be, Justin will be leading a group, Lane is going to be leading the young adult group, and I will be leading a group for a while. We're going to be doing those, and those are going to be in homes rather than here at the church. We're doing that for 3 reasons. First of all, so that we can reach into those communities. Second of all, because we have people driving 30, 40 minutes to get to church, and it's really hard to tell somebody, hey, you need to be here at small group, but also you've got a 30-minute drive to get there, plus you've got a 30-minute drive on the way home. It's going to be 8:45 before you get your kids home. They're just not going to do it. So by moving into homes, we'll be able to move them south, we'll be able to move them north, I guess east and west. I don't know. There's only 3, so we won't do east and west. But we'll have those in different areas to make it easier. But there's also a different level of connection that comes for being in homes. And we want to make those better. I have a lot more to say about that, but I'm not going to. We're going to be redoing our small groups. They're going to have a leader, a co-leader, and a host. That way we're not burning our leaders out, and we're also training new people to step up and take those groups. We need 5 groups. We do not need 4 groups. We need 5 groups. But I don't have the leaders to put in charge of that. So we're training new people so that we're able to step up and put new people in those positions. But the thing that we need from you is we need people that are willing to host. We need 2 host families that will say, for the first 4 weeks of the small group, it can be at my house. I will organize the food for the meals. I'll organize everybody to make sure food's there. I'll set up the rotation list to make sure somebody's watching the kids in one of the bedrooms. We've got space. We'll do that. We need 2 hosts. One for the young adult group, because y'all don't have a host yet, right, Lane? Do you have a host yet? So the young adult group needs a host, and then right now, I'm leading a group and hosting a group, and we don't really want that. We want to have the leader not hosting. So we need someone that lives south of here, not somebody in Centerton, somebody south of here to host that, so we can move those. We need those from you. Another thing that we're doing to stir one another up better is we're going to ordain 2 new deacons this year. I've asked the deacons, because their load is getting heavy with the families that they have, to recommend 2 new people to you to be deacons, and they have done that. We're going to be recommending Derek, and we're going to be recommending Grant to you as deacons at the January business meeting. And you'll have the opportunity to vote there to do that. If you vote yes, they'll go into a probationary period, and then we'll ordain them sometime this spring if they make it through that. But we need those 2 new deacons. And so pray about that as we move forward on that, and pray for them. The last thing is we voted to hire an associate pastor earlier in this year, and I have drugged my feet on it for several reasons, and I'm out of time to go into all of those reasons. But we are now at the point now that our 2024-25 budget is ready to go, now that we've had time to look and think about it and pray about it, and everybody's getting tired of me dragging my feet. Now that we're at that point, I'm going to be interviewing people in the next couple of months for that role. That associate pastor's job, some people say, what is this associate pastor even going to do? Well, I'm just going to tell you, I was doing way too much, and I had Clay said to me this week, it'll be a help to you to have an associate pastor. And honestly, it won't change my whole life a whole lot to have an associate pastor. It'll change it a little bit. It'll make some things easier, but it's not going to change my workload a whole lot, because I nearly burnt myself out trying to do everything. And I've just had to decide I can't. So what this new guy will do is not come in and take things off of my plate, but pick up the things that I'm just not doing. The discipleship ministry is running with volunteer leadership and not a whole lot of oversight from me, because I don't have time. I have not done training with our small group leaders. I have not made our small group leaders better because I don't have time. And our associate pastor is going to come in and hopefully take over those areas, or take some things from me and I'll take over those areas, but to give us the ability to do a good job with the stirring up to love and good works. So what do we need from you? First of all, we need you to show up. We need you to be here. We need you to participate. If you've said, this is my church, I'm committed to it, then be here. Well, I can't go on vacation. I can't. You can do all that. But the rule of thumb is, if we are surprised you're here, you have a problem, right? If we're surprised you're gone and we're worried about you, you're fine. But if we're surprised you're here, you have a problem. If this is your church, that means Jesus has assigned you here. You need to be here. We need you to give. We need you to give. Not because the church has bills to pay, although we do. Not because I get a salary, although I do. Not because these ministries have to function, but because you are called to give towards this church as an act of worship to God. How much should you give? The biblical standard is 10%. That's what's covered every time in the Bible. What Paul says is that you should give as the Lord leads you, and you should give generously and cheerfully. I'm pretty sure he's going to lead you to 10%, but you do that with God. You work together with him on that. If you're a guest here, I'm not asking for your money. But if this is your church, God has said one of the things that you do is give as an act of worship. He's going to provide for us, but he's chosen to provide for us through you. The third thing that I need you to do is be involved. And I guess it's good that there are certain people out of the room for this. It says I'm doing a workout. My goodness. I guess it's good that there are certain people out of the room for this. But there are some people that work really, really hard in this church. And I'm not talking about, they serve twice a month instead of once a month. I'm talking there are people that spend 10 to 15 hours a week working for this church that you don't know about. I don't talk about Brittany a lot because I don't want to be like, yeah, that's his wife and stuff. You don't know the amount of hours that she puts in. We have some huge fights about the things that she does here. And it's not me telling her to do it and she's fighting to not do it. It's me saying, stop it and go home. I'm just give you an example about this, okay? She comes up and spends 3 days reorganizing this stupid shed out here. Not because I'm telling her to, but because she loves the church. Clayton will come up here and he will mow and he will work. I see him almost every day up here working. There are people working all the time. I hate to do this because I'm going to miss somebody. The number of hours that David and Carla put in between working on budgets and being the children's director and leading us, there are people, and it's not just those. There are tons of people that put in a ton of hours. And I'm not asking you to put in 15 hours a week. I'm not asking you to do that. But there is something that you do need to do, and that is participate as God leads you to and respect what they're doing. Lindsay's not in here, and I don't know if it's good that she's not in here or not when I say this, but you don't know the number of hours that Lindsay puts in as a volunteer coordinator. You don't know. It's the hardest job in this church. It's easier for me to write sermons and preach than it is for her to organize 14 volunteers a Sunday. And what happens, let's take the shed, let's take the yard, let's take the children's ministry, let's take this. When you who say, this is my church, and you're going to get mad at me, but that's okay, Jesus made people mad too. When you say, this is my church, but then you walk in there and see somebody else has spent 3 days organizing the shed and you just toss stuff in there, do you know what you do to them? Do you know what you do? When somebody takes weeks creating a volunteer schedule so that somebody is with your kids, so that somebody is prepared to teach, so that somebody is watching those doors to make sure a gunman doesn't come in here and kill us. Somebody does that, and you can't bother to click yes or no when they say, are you willing to do the job you volunteered to do or not? Do you know what that does to them? Do you know what it does? When you say, I want other people to take care of my kids, but I'm not going to take care of anybody else's kids. I'm not going to help in any way. I just want those 10 people, those 20 people who are doing 80% of the work to keep doing more work so I can enjoy and never give back. Do you know what that does to them? I figured out in the last 2 years, I'm going long, but it's going to be okay. I figured out in the last 2 years, I've always wondered why preachers quit ministry. I've always wondered. And I thought it was because it was a hard job, and it is a hard job, but that's not why they quit. I thought it was because of the low pay, and I'm not complaining about my pay, but generally it's low pay compared to other things. But I figured out it's not about low pay. The reason pastors quit ministry, the reason high-level volunteers, and I don't mean high-ranking, but people who give and give and give of their time quit, is not because it's hard, and it's not because it's low pay. They quit because it hurts. It hurts, guys. It hurts to work and to work and to work and to have no appreciation for it. It hurts to work and to work and to work and have people disrespect the work that you did, even if you think it's not that big of a deal. It hurts. And I'm not talking about for me, but I'm talking about those volunteers who run our church, who keep it going, that you don't even know what they do. So when you get a volunteer request because you signed up for it, click yes or click no. When you know that you're going to be out of town for something, when you know, put in your blackout dates. Text Lindsay and say, I don't know how to put in my blackout dates, but I'm not going to be here at this time. If you're sick on Saturday night or Sunday morning, we understand. But do not know on Tuesday that you won't be there on Sunday and disrespect the person who put in weeks of work to organize this so that your kids are taken care of. Do not disrespect them enough to tell them on Saturday night, oh, I've known for a week or 2 weeks. I just forgot to tell you. Do you know what that does to people? Participate in this church, whatever way God calls you to, whatever way you're able to, whatever you have time to, but participate in a way that is loving toward those others that participate and serve and give. Because this church does not function without people. And we need you to be hosts. I need 2 host families, people who say, for 4 weeks, I will open up my home and let other people come in my home and let my home be a house of worship. Let my home be used, not just for my own isolation, but for the work of God. I need that. 2024 has been a great year. It's been a difficult year, but it's been a great year. And 2025 is set up to be an even better year for this church. But The blessings that we will receive in 25 are blessings that we will have to sow and water and reap. So you decide what kind of blessings we'll receive. If you're willing to work, you're willing to show up, you're willing to serve, we will reap a great harvest. But if you phone it in and leave it to 3 or 4 people to get all the work done, then next year we'll be celebrating when 5 more people are saved. Not when 25 people are saved, not when 50 people are saved, not when 100 people are saved, but when 5 are saved. We'll be celebrating when 10 more people are baptized. We'll be celebrating when we have 19, 29 new members, whatever it is. If you continue to allow a few people to do all the work, then we will continue to do what we're doing until those people quit and leave because we have burned them out. Or you can step up to follow the Great Commission this year. You can step up to stir one another up to love and good works this year. What will you decide? Would you stand with me? Our Heavenly Father, Lord, I come before you right now, and I'm so grateful that we have the chance to gather together and worship and that you've given us this church, Lord. And I am grateful for the blessings that you've given us. I'm grateful for all the things that you've done in this church this year, Lord. I'm grateful for every person that was saved, every person that was baptized, every person that joined this church, Lord, was a work of you and an act of obedience. And I'm grateful for that, Lord. But when I look at where we are and who we are, and I say, is that really all we can do? Is that really all we can be? And I don't care, Lord, what size our church gets to. I am not after a megachurch. That is not anywhere in my mind, but I know that this city and this county is filled with lost people, Lord. And I can't help but think, what would those numbers be? How different would that be if we stop thinking of the Great Commission as something I try to get people to follow and something you, who have all authority on heaven and on earth, have commanded us to do and will hold us accountable for? What would happen if we took this church that you called us to seriously and we stepped up and served? We respected the service of others. We pitched in, Lord, to stir one another up and carry out the work. I wonder what would happen. And I ask, Lord, in 2025 that I will see the answer to that question. That we will show up, that we'll participate, that we'll go with the gospel, Lord, and we will see what can happen when a church decides to obey your commands. Let us see it. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.